Alright. So, in the first of these videos, believe it or not, on my list is first on the list is Stephen A. Smith. Now, why did I put this guy as someone to talk about? Well, I've watched quite a bit of his content, and he's gotten, more into the political realm and stuff he's passionate about. I respect that. I've also respected highly of how much of a direct and straight shooter he is. And he even prides his brand as just being very direct, high respect type of personality. And something recently, well, I guess maybe not extremely recently, but if you watch a lot of his political takes, there's always a lens for which he gets his answer, and it's through a racist angle. He backs it up extremely well, but because he has an underlying understanding of that there is systemic racism. I don't know if he would exactly put it as systemic, but at the very least, everything he answers in the political realm, it is off of a baseline that there is or was racism to some degree. I don't know to how far he will put his foot down on it, but I do recognize that it hinders his ability to have extremely well thought out and well positioned takes. And it's kind of unfortunate because I highly respect his opinion, and not as highly as, say, someone like Michael Knowles or my top guy, Charlie Kirk. And so with that, I would hope that someone kind of, reaches him and, exposes that his political takes, as sharp as they are, always have a starting point of there's, racism in this country, and there has been racism in this country. When you push them to like, well, is the white man, suppressing, blacks and getting ahead because of that, and he would oftentimes, I would assume he would say no, he's very capitalistic in how he views the economy, right? You work hard, but he would insert a very subtle jab that the black community and black men in general have had to work harder for their money than the white man has. And it's unfortunate that he sees it that way, because it really hinders how much I can believe his takes on political views. If I were to kind of give, my take on, is there racism, I like to take the approach of like, we can't assume that's the thing in the first place. It gives a lot of political clout to assume that, well, if two men are looking for a job, one black, one white, and the white man ends up getting it, it gets a lot of publicity to say, well, there was racism at hand, and the black man didn't get the job because he was black. And it's a sad starting point to assume that because of somebody's skin color is the reason why they got the job or didn't get the job. This is why I'm kind of glad the DEI has been removed, because as much as it tried to hope for equality, it gave a doubt to everyone who was ever hired. People like Stephen A. Smith will say, well, look at, why was this law there in the first place, right? Trying to go back to, hey, there was something underlying that was racism, and that still exists today. And I would say that's a bad view, a bad way to always start off. You're assuming that there is racism, and then you start backing that up with whatever evidence you can come up with, or the interpretation of the evidence that you can come up with. And I would much rather see people like Stephen A. Smith not start with racism was the reason why someone didn't get their job or did get their job, or why there's more black people in this business than in another business, or why there's more white people in one business than in the black business, right? Start with assuming that the company that's hiring these people is doing it because they're the best for the job, and you can do an investigation if you wanted to go that far. But assuming that when you walk into a grocery store and you see 5 white men immediately, to assume that, well, they clearly turned down black men for this job because I don't see any black men, is a bad starting point. Would it not just be as reasonable that only white men applied for the job? In which case, the opportunity to deny a black man was never an option there, right? So, how do we fix this, as it were? Well, change the starting point. Don't always assume racism was the reason why somebody got hired. If you do that, everything's racist to you, or everything is sexist, right? I would leave that malintent investigation to like the employees of the company. Like I never once, when I worked at Meijer, felt that the employees there were like selectively sorted, right, in order to get their jobs or something, right? I never felt that the people that were working there were there only because of their skin color. Granted, I was only in the entry level, right? The team member position. And the entry level doesn't require that difficult of tasks. But I would start noticing if all I had were black people and they weren't doing their jobs very well, I would start thinking, well, maybe there is something to it. But I've always been trying to take the approach of, well, perhaps these were the only ones available on they sent in their resumes. When I first got hired in at Meijer, I just needed a job. I'm like, I'm praying that they don't just pass me up because I'm a white man. Because it was getting kind of difficult. I could see the writing on the wall where it was going to be difficult for me as a white man to get a job, because if there was another black man in competition for my job, for that one spot opening, well, politics would encourage the company to pass me up and go for a black man, even though we're both equally qualified. But it would subtly just make it more difficult for me. And I guess that's somewhat of an extension when I see people assume a racist underlying current to everything. I have felt the real effects of it negatively affecting my job opportunities. All because I was given a label that I didn't earn, but the rest of the world is applying it to me. They're defining me off of the merit of somebody else or something else that they assume. So if I can try to wrap this up, people like Stephen A. Smith that have some pretty good takes on the political landscape really do their intelligence and speaking abilities and their audience a disservice by constantly asserting that there is malintent from a racist undertone that's always been there, or that there's a constant revenge seeking from one side of the political party or the other, in which, in this case of Stephen A. Smith, he leans a bit more Democrat, though I do see that he is somewhat centrist. He even self-proclaims himself to be centrist, but if I were to really give him a label, he's a pretty strong supporter of the Democrats. Well, I can't say strong. He's been pretty critical about their recent operations. But I know if he could, he would hope that the Democratic Party would get its act together, more so than the Republicans. But anyway, he does himself basically a disservice every time he assumes that the racism in the past is still influencing things today. He doesn't give nearly enough credit to the Christians that worked very, very hard throughout the 20th century to really reverse the systemic racism during the times of the civil rights era. And he doesn't give enough credit to the Christians now that have done a great job at combating any amount of racism even today, instead keeping it alive through however subtle rhetoric or undertones of his political takes. Alright, so thanks for watching. If you happen to watch this whole thing, I promise I'll get better at some of these takes or monologues with time. But regardless, hope it got you to at least kind of think about some of the things I see. Perhaps could help you maybe improve your discerning skills. I don't want to take any credit at all. Like, this is like a extremely rough video, but if you did get something, go ahead. You can leave a comment below. I'll see it. I don't have any comments on my YouTube channel, and I'll definitely give a response if you decide to do so. Alrighty, thanks.